Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome. It's always a pleasure to meet somebody new. Today I have another genre makers for you guys. And for those of you who might be new to this is where I go into games that either made or redefined genres of video games, and some do it in large ways and others in smaller, more refined ways. Today, like many days, we actually go back to the realm of the arcade scene. It's pretty common ground here, but also a fertile ground for finding unusual game types and precursors of existing games or franchises. And today is no exception, because today we're going to talk about a game that was sort of a pseudo-predecessor to a franchise that we all likely know, and that's Metal Slug. This, for all intents and purposes, is a lesser-known title that goes by the name Gunforce. So, if you're curious about run-and-gun shooters and how they possibly influenced Metal Slug, grab a snack and a drink and hang out a while as we dig into this one. I think this one's going to be pretty fun. I'm kind of looking forward to this. Now, most of us know Metal Slug as a series either as a Neo Geo favorite or that other title that wasn't Contra. That's not really meant as an insult, it's just that Contra had a more grounded tone, if fighting an alien invasion could be considered grounded, and it might have been a little bit more well known from the console scene because the NES was around longer for starters and was infinitely cheaper than a Neo Geo, so more people had it at home. Now, that all said, Metal Slug was very popular in its own right because it embraced brighter colors and more expressive animations with more over-the-top explosions, and many people would favor one of these over the other, but both games were exceedingly popular. Metal Slug arguably can be considered a little more popular of the two, with its clean, bright sprites and vehicle combat, which was one of the characteristics that made it stand out in ways that Contra did not, at least not till later titles like Contra 3 Alien Wars. Like I said, it's not that Contra didn't have this, it's just more limited and didn't have it till much later in the series. It was one of the fun, distinguishing things that made it feel and flow differently from Contra itself. And honestly, led to it having like 9 or 10 titles, arguably almost more than Contra has had over the years. However, this isn't to talk about Metal Slug or Contra, it's to talk about the link between these two that often goes overlooked. A missing link, if you will, in games that relates these two to one another, and that link is Gunforce itself. Now, Contra dropped in 1987. Metal Slug dropped in 1996. Gunforce basically hits right between those two, launching in 1991, but with a bit of an evolution in gameplay from the original Contra pattern. You still had the familiar run and gun, albeit a little bit slower pace than either Metal Slug or Contra, however it did have a few advantages over at least Contra, and that was the ability to use ladders to move between levels and aim your gun while you do so. This allowed you good flexibility in attacking while moving without having to jump like you would have to in Contra. However, you could still do that as an option. On top of that, you also had access to various different vehicles that would show up on the stage, allowing you to run over, fire, and maneuver through stages in various different ways. This added more flexibility. Well, okay, flexibility isn't really the right word here, as most of the vehicles happen to be in your way on the stage, and it's pretty much a given that you're going to be using them. It did break out some of the monotony of the slower pace of the game as a whole, though, which made it a little bit more palatable for more gamers. And that's not an exaggeration either. Due to the animation or the actual movement pace of Gunforce, it just looks slow. So while it's a cool linchpin and a curiosity in the gaming space, it doesn't look like something that you'd want to play over either of the other franchises listed around it. But what it did do is be one of the earlier games to kind of introduce these mechanics and that kind of gap between these two, making it an interesting linker between the two and almost a forgotten note in gaming history in and of itself, which I find pretty fascinating, honestly. All that said, the reason you really haven't heard of Gunforce is, well, it didn't really get very many, if any, sequels that I could tell. So I don't know that it was really well received or really well regarded in lieu of the other two franchises that were around at the time. However, what do you guys actually think of this one? Have any of you ever played Gunforce before? Had you even heard of this one before this video? If so, what did you think of it? What do you think of it as I showed it to you now if you haven't played it before? Does it put some of the pieces together for some of the innovations in the genre? Are you curious to go back and play it now in perspective of everything else that you've been shown today? Let me know in the comments. While you're there, if you don't mind, please leave this video a like. Also, if you see more of my stuff you like, please consider following the channel. That actually helps me out a ton. Till we meet again though, have a great rest of your day, and happy gaming.